Now, in the year 2023, I've put up a lot of videos. In fact, it might be a little bit annoying. However, putting out that volume of content is a lot of the reason why I'm able to do the things I'm able to do today as a content creator. In today's video, I'm going to talk about one of my not so secret techniques, and that's going to be batch recording. Now, I have been doing this since I started my YouTube channel. And with the help of the Lumix S9 and Riverside FM, which is a sponsor of our video, I'm going to show you all the techniques that I would use and also using the built-in editor in Riverside FM to make your batch recording sessions easier. But, well, we'll get there. Now, some things you want to consider when you're batch recording content is one, make sure that you have a space where you can record a lot of content in and you don't want to change it too much. Well, one of the things I've done is I've moved places and I've set up an office so it looks good enough for me to make content in here and I don't have to worry about rejigging my talking head setup. A lot of times these educationally based videos are a mix of talking head and B-roll to support whatever you're saying. Now, if you're working on something a little bit more cinematic, a little bit more commercial looking, you might not use this technique. However, for everything else, having a good setup makes a lot of sense and it helps out a lot with having a place that you're actually comfortable making content in. Another thing I like to do when I'm actually scripting and ideating videos, I try to make sure that they're around common concepts. So for example, if I was to do a batch recording session on, say, the Sony FX6 and make 67 videos on it, I might actually have those ideas pre-scripted before my batch recording session. That way, when I do my talking head bits, all I have to do is talk about my own experiences and things that I already know, which makes the entire process very smooth and also easy to edit because you're not going back and forth and getting talking head clips and then getting B-roll at the same time. Oftentimes I get a lot of my A-roll after I've shot a bunch of the B-roll first, so that way I'm only talking about the experience that's supported by the B-roll, which is still educational and valuable to the audience. Now, number 3 is going to go into the gear and some of the technical things that you can use in order to batch record your content with. Now, personally for me, I like to leave my Lumix cameras at home for YouTube stuff, mostly because it can do open gate and I can do real-time LUT, which is why I like the Lumix S9. The fact that it's small, it's compact, you can record quite a lot of footage for a 128GB card, and it's small enough that I could leave it on a small tripod at home, set up my audio, and I could just turn this guy on and have everything set up for a batch recording session. And I have my own A7C Mark II. Now, that's not me saying you need 4 cameras in order to run a YouTube channel. You could interchange these, or you could just take one off one of the stands and work with whatever you want, but generally speaking, using these smaller, more compact hybrid cameras are what I use for this channel. And then you can mix and match or use as many or as little as you'd like. Now, using real-time LUT and using OpenGate is going to come in handy for this demonstration, especially when we're going to be working with Riverside. Now, we're going to go into the tutorial part of this so I could show you exactly how I use this in-house editor in order for you to batch record your content and make the process a lot easier. Now we're in Riverside Studio. Now, one of the things you might need to do, and it still takes a step outside of this editor, is you want to make everything one clip. Now, I went over to DaVinci Resolve, I put all my clips and I lined them up and I exported it as one color graded clip. Now, Riverside FM does work really well in terms of having longer talking head clips. So one of the things that I did was I just made sure I exported it as one instead of 5 little clips to try to stitch together later. Now, you can't upload multiple video clips onto Riverside FM. However, I prefer to do it this way just because it's a little bit easier, it's a little bit concise, and also exporting out of DaVinci Resolve doesn't require the internet. So now that that's done, we have one clip that's going to be called Riverside AI. I'm just going to drag and drop it into the studio and let it upload and do its thing. Now, one thing we're going to talk about a little bit later is the fact that Riverside FM also remembers your voice. It's a little bit creepy, but we're actually going to write out an entire ad read, and I'm going to show you how Riverside AI voice is able to use the clips that you've already uploaded, find your speaking cadence and the tone of voice, and actually spit it out as an AI voiceover. It still has a little bit of a ways to go, but it's pretty good for what it is on the first try for a lot of times. But we'll get on with that a little bit later. So it does take a little bit of time in order to upload your footage, especially if you're uploading in 4K. But once it's there, we can get into editing on Riverside Studio. Now, one of the things you're going to notice on the screen right here is that you can still pull out either the full episode or you can get magic clips if it's a little bit longer. It did prompt you up and say you needed about 5 minutes in terms of talking head footage. I put about 3 minutes and 45 seconds on there, but I can show you some of the magic clips a little bit later. Right now, I want to show you some of the tools that work inside of the text-based AI editor that Riverside FM has. Now, in order to do that, I got to go over to edit, create a new edit. And what you're going to get here is a lot of text on the left, which transcribed everything that I said in that first little intro of this video. And then I'm going to have pretty much everything I can edit off on the side. Now, one of the things that we had before on Riverside FM was the ability to change my orientation for different social media platforms. So I can go to 9:16, I go to 1:1, or I'm just going to go to 16:9 because that's what I'm going to use. Now, this is going to look a little bit pixelated while you're editing it. I'm assuming because it's a web-based editor, you might have to down-res things, but it does export in up to 4K. Now, one thing I'm going to go over here that's new is the AI producer. Now, I'm somebody that talks at a pretty quick pace, but you can set the pace in terms of your audio. So sometimes what ends up happening is you might have pauses or things that are in between your takes. And what set the pace does is you open it up and it actually will give you the ability to change and remove some of those little pauses that you have in your clips. And you can actually do it by the speed of the pace that you want. So if I want to go to fast pace, anything that's longer than a second is going to start to remove things. If I want anything that's super fast, then it's going to remove quite a lot of stuff and make sure there's no dead space in between my words. Now, just for the sake of this video, I am going to go to super fast and see what ends up happening. Once I press apply, if you notice at the bottom of the timeline, there's going to be spaces that are in there. And those are things that are now cut out in terms of longer spaces in my speech. So what we're going to do here is once I've done that, I'm going to just kind of scrub over just so you can see how quickly that it might be. These are actually comfortable making content in. Another thing I like to do when I'm actually scripting and ideating videos, I try to make sure that they're around comedy. So that's one. You can see it jumps right over the second I stop talking. Now I'm going to just scroll over to a couple of the other ones just to make sure that they actually sound decent. That's supported by the B-roll, which is still educational and valuable to the audience. Now, number 3 is obviously going to be the gear that's going to be involved in terms of batch recording. Now, in terms of using that actually is pretty useful. I would make those cuts anyways, but I would have to scrub through all the footage in order to do that. Now I can just press a button, let the AI do it for me, so at least some of the pauses disappear. Now, another thing you're going to be able to do on the AI producer is go over to smooth speech. Now, if one of these guys is to remove some of the pauses, the other one is to remove filler words like your ums and your ahs. I don't really use too many of those too often. However, if I do apply this onto here, it'll tell me where some of them are. Now that that's on there, you'll see a little bit of these spaces that are now cut out are going to be places where I would have had a word that was a filler that you might not have wanted to get. So for example, let's just play this through. Now, number 3 is going to go into the gear and some of the technical things that you can use in order. I'm going to play that one more time because it's super quick and I think it's one of the few ums I have. Now, number 3 is going to go into the gear and some of the technical things that you can use in order to batch record content to it. Now, what it doesn't do is that if I restart a sentence to restart a take, it can't distinguish on the AI which ones are things that are repeated or which ones to cut out. Now, one of the ways I can use that though is I can just go into the text-based editor. I just backtrack a little bit where I kind of repeated myself. Let me see if I can find it. Now I might have to bleep this out. There's a swear word in here, so I'm just going to do that. But what I'm going to do here is go over to here and delete. And that way it's all gone. So now if I have to listen to this again, anything between some A7, C2, A7. Now, number 3 is going to go into the gear and some of the technical things. Now, I didn't actually delete all of what I needed to, so I could actually expand this a little bit more. And now I could see it. Now I've repeated myself 3 times. So I can go back up, click delete, and it'll get rid of that. And I can go back and check again. That's low enough that you can store a lot of information without having to change up your card too fast. Now, number 3 is going to go into the gear and some of the technical things that you can. Now, that's a lot faster. Now, in just a couple of minutes, I was able to cut down not only the pauses, some of the filler words, and also cut down sometimes where I repeat myself by just reading over the text. What's also nice about these as well is that it actually has little headers on here as well. So they actually transcribe everything that you say, and AI determines what some of the parts of your video actually is. So when you are editing your talking head portions, usually when you're doing educational style content, this is one of the most important things that are going to help you with your video, is making sure that the information is concise and also something you're able to understand. Now, while using this, what happens is that segments things, which really helps out because it helps you figure out different parts in your video, because unfortunately the AI editor as it is right now isn't as intricate on the timeline level as something like DaVinci Resolve. Now, on top of that, if you are somebody that wants to clean up your audio as well, we'll go into the third aspect of our AI producer, and I can just add in some magic audio, which will actually enhance the audio on one track. That one takes a little bit of time to get going, but I can still edit the rest of my video while that's happening. Now, we're going to also have some things on the right side of the menu in terms of that, and it's not necessarily AI based, but it does help out a lot. If you're somebody who likes to have a logo in every one of your videos, you can add one, or you can add a background. If you're someone that wants to organize some of your audio tracks, I already have the magic audio going. I could choose to hide the video, which I don't want to do. Or if you have something where it's more of a split screen, like you're doing a podcast with 2 people, you can mirror the video as well if you want to do that. So there are some basic functions in terms of transforming the image. Now, if you want to go over to your layout, you can choose how you want to do this, especially when you have 2 video tracks, and you can change your video ratio. Now, this really helps out as well, especially when you're shooting an OpenGate. Sometimes in OpenGate, when you export as is, you might just have a little bit of a square file. Now I can go over here to fill or to fit. I want to fill up the entire screen on my 16:9, but if you're using OpenGate in the square format, that 4:3, as long as you click the fill, it'll be able to fill up that space. The only thing I'd love to see Riverside FM make in the future is a way that you can move around where the actual screen is. So for example, if I go into my 9:16, if I want to move that left or right, I want it to be a little bit easier to do that. But for a text-based, web-based editor, this actually works pretty well. Are you enjoying the tutorial? Of course you are. Now, if you are interested in going into Riverside FM and using its built-in editor and AI tools for yourself, you could actually use my code. It's Kofi20. I'm going to leave it down in the description down below. I needed to interrupt your tutorial a little bit right about here, but let's get back into the video. Now, if I'm someone that wants to put captions in my videos, generally I won't do it on YouTube. You could always do that as well. It's already transcribed the video for you, so once you click on one of these things, I can click if I want my cases to be all uppercase. I could change if I want a different style. I could change the color. I could change the font. I could do a bunch of things on my captions. Now, for this video, I'm probably not going to use captions. I generally don't. But if you're someone that makes a lot of vertical content, all you have to do is go to your 9:16, go to your captions, and you can import them and move them around however you like. Now, what I can use is actually the parameters on the bottom here where it organizes different parts of my videos, make an in and out point, and I can make an Instagram reel on the fly. This is what I mean by batch recording your content. If you have something or a lot of talking head based videos, you're able to not only edit it and edit the A roll and put B roll on later, which is a lot simpler once you have it, but at the same time, if I want to repurpose some of this content for social media, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever, I can do that in this program as well and then just export and I'm ready to go. Now, just for some other things, if you want to put a title on there as well, you can do that here. If you want to import some of the images, Riverside actually has some stock images that you could put onto here as well. And if you also have other uploads and you want to upload some stuff onto here and add them into there, I added some audio in there a little bit earlier, you can add that into your video. Now, the thing is that this only has one track. It doesn't have an audio and a video track. They're embedded into each other. So once I go to my uploads, for example, if I want to put this into there and I want to drag and drop that, once I've added it, it kind of resides in the same space as a video track. I can't really get rid of it from there. So in terms of editing your talking head pieces, I think this comes in handy. Now you still have to export this guy out to put into DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut or Premiere in order to put your B-roll, your music, and some of the other things and a little bit of your spice, mostly because this web-based editor just isn't there quite yet. However, in terms of batch recording your A-roll, which is something I do quite a bit and which is a cornerstone in terms of me putting a lot of content out, this actually makes the process a lot quicker. Now I still work with an editor, and one thing I like to do is to make sure things are as prepared as possible. So if I'm able to send him an already colored, already audio adjusted, and already cut up A-roll timeline, then that makes it a lot easier to add in B-roll, sound effects, and actually make the project a lot bigger, especially because you can do this in the span of just a couple of minutes. Now, this is what I mean about making multiple forms of content out of one A-roll clip. Now, this is something called Camera Wars. It was just basically me talking about a couple of cameras that are coming out. But what I did was I went to the actual magic clips, which are already clicked over here, in order to make some smaller pieces for social media. So for example, if I go into this one and I want to take it out. Now, magic clips, it's not a perfect science, but it does help you make some vertical content out of the stuff you've already talked about. Now, one of the things I can do here is, first of all, I'm in my 9:16. I'm going to go to my layout. I'm going to make sure that this fills up. Again, I wish I could kind of just scooch that over to the side so I'm centered. But what I can do is I can go into here, go to my captions. I'm going to make them uppercase. I like having myself some yellow text, and that's not going to change. I can make it orange, or maybe you could add a different color or a hex code. I don't remember the hex code for my stuff. But what I can do here is just press play. All what I'm trying to say is that a lot of these releases aren't necessarily going to be image quality dependent. I think the way that we're judging some of these cameras might not be the best thing in the world. You're gonna see an incremental upgrade. Now, obviously, I've made a couple of mistakes here in terms of repeating my speech and messing up, essentially, which happens to everybody. Now, one of the things I can do is I can run it through the AI producer again, just like I can on a longer clip. I can set the pace, which has already happened. It's already done because there isn't a lot of pauses in here. Or smooth speech, which I can revert to the original. And again, I'm going to go and I'm going to adjust my audio. And what I can do is I can use my text-based editor in order to clean up the times where I've repeated myself just like we did before. I don't really know if it helps out a lot to go through that again, but you can use a text-based editor in order to adjust things and to make sure this is clear and concise. Once that's done, all I have to do is export it, which I can choose to go into 4K and I could normalize my audio levels, and I could reduce the background noise, and I could export that video right away. Now, this makes things a little bit easier. That's from a much longer video that's going on the channel. Now, if I want to put something up where maybe I have a teaser that's going to go on my Instagram or my YouTube shorts from that particular video, now I have more than one piece of content when only having to record once. Okay, so this part is where it's going to get a little bit freaky. I decided to write in a 30-second ad read, which you normally see in YouTube videos, for Riverside FM, and then use Riverside Voice AI in order to see if it replicates my voice accurately. Now, what Riverside does is, as you upload clips, as you live stream, as you use it more and more, the AI actually starts to learn your voice, your cadence, and actually how you speak. So when you type things in, it's actually pretty close to the way that you would talk to begin with. Now, what's cool about this is you could also edit a lot of the things in this AI clip as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to play this out through once, and then we're going to use some of the other things in the text-based editor in order to refine it to at least make it sound like it's half decent. Just watch this for a second. This video is sponsored by Riverside.fm, featuring new features to make creating content easier. You can now directly upload your talking head clips to use Riverside's AI text editor and some of their new features. Riverside AI Editor gives you the ability to not only remove filler words and unwanted sounds, but also set speech pacing by removing long pauses. You can AI enhance audio for clear sounding footage and use magic clips for repurposing content for social media. Editing just got easier with Riverside FM. Now, in terms of my voice and some of the cadence and inflection, it actually got it pretty decently. Now, you did notice that when, ironically, we were talking about the pacing, it actually stretched out things with long pauses. Now, the AI isn't a perfect science, and I'd be really freaked out if it was, but that doesn't mean you can't adjust some of those things as well. Now, as you can see here, I already pre-spaced out some of these longer pauses, which took me about 2 minutes to do. And what I can do is I could straight up just delete all of them and then play this all over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all of these guys, I'm going to delete them. And if you want to know how to do that and put spaces in there in case you encounter the same thing, all you have to do is go over to split and then just put it in an out point wherever you're going to get those long pauses, sort of like you would on any other editor. You just have to move the playhead over and then you click split and there you go. Now I've already split these, so there's no point of me doing it again. But once I get rid of some of these guys, the pacing might be a little bit quick, but at the same time, it doesn't sound as robotic. And we'll see how it sounds. So let's drag this playhead all the way to the back and we'll start this again. This video is sponsored by Riverside.fm, featuring new features to make creating content easier. You can now directly upload your talking head clips to use Riverside's AI text editor and some of their new features. Riverside AI Editor gives you the ability to not only remove filler words and unwanted sounds, but also set speech pacing by removing long pauses. You can AI enhance audio for clear sounding footage and use magic clips for repurposing content for social media. Editing just got easier with Riverside FM. Now, again, that's better. That's an improvement. I might want to take out a little bit of the drag on the words and make it really refined to make the pacing really tight. However, the fact that this took me a couple of minutes, which usually doing an ad read might take me an hour because I mess up so much, this is something that you guys could use, especially if you have some ad reads that are playing over footage that already exists. Maybe there's assets from the company, or maybe the things that you have going on the background. However, this is a pretty decent way of covering some times when maybe you miss out a sentence in a podcast or in a video, or when you mess up as much as I do when you're doing ad reads, in order to kind of bridge those gaps so you don't have to turn the camera on, set things up, and try to read it over and over and over again. That being said, those are some of the new AI features in Riverside FM. Now, before I use this as a communication tool to do production calls or podcast type episodes, but now I can use it to actually batch edit and batch record some of my talking head footage for my channel, so that way when I put it into the next level of post, it's a lot easier so I can get back to the things that matter. Not saying that YouTube doesn't matter, but just getting back to the things that make my life a little bit easier. That being said, a special shout out to Riverside FM. I think that this is going to be a promising software for a lot of creators. You might have to play with it a little bit in order to get used to things and making it really work for yourself. However, for a lot of people that have talking head based footage, I think this is something where you can make a lot of use for it. But that being said, see you guys in the next one. Peace.